If you want to learn how to turn your magic lantern footage from this to that, you've come to the right place. Hello Lantern Magician, I'm Jay, your guide to cut through the hype and actually master your EOS M. You hear that? That's the sound of a $200 camera demanding a $2,000 computer. That's because Magic Lantern Raw is cheap to shoot, but there's a hidden part nobody talks about. Now, on paper, this episode is about post-production hardware. What computer you actually need, what software, how to set it up, and yes, we are going to get into all of that. But I've rewritten this video more times than I want to admit, and every time I did, it kept wanting to be something bigger, because this isn't really a hardware video. This is a fork in the road. I wouldn't be surprised if half of you unsubscribe after watching this, and that's completely fine. This channel has always been about telling you the truth, not what you want to hear, so I'd rather lose you now than waste your time later. If you stick with this, and I mean really stick with it, you already have access to everything you need to get into the top 1% in terms of results. Not because of the gear, because almost nobody is willing to put in the reps to actually master this. Watch this one to the end. I think it's going to change how you see this whole journey. Let's zoom out. Remember this? Episode 4. And I want to come back to it now because this is the video where it really lands. This is the system, everything that shapes what your audience actually sees, feels, and remembers. Story and message, audio, visual fundamentals, editing and post, logistics and direction, marketing and distribution, and yes, camera and tech. Look at that last slice. A $200 cinema camera. A $2,000 cinema camera, a $20,000 cinema camera. You know what they all have in common? None of them make films. Filmmakers make films, and a filmmaker is not someone who owns a camera. A filmmaker is someone who can work the whole wheel. And by choosing this path, Magic Lantern Raw, Manual Pipeline, Real Image Authorship, you have chosen one of the most complex and steepest learning curves in all of filmmaking. The technical depth here is serious, but it is also the most rewarding path if what you care about is beauty, craft, and results that don't date. Just know what you're getting into. You're either building a system or you're collecting toys. This video is about building the system, and by the end of it, you'll either be in or you'll know exactly why this isn't your lane. In motorsport, nobody wakes up and drives Formula 1. You start in go-karts, a tiny engine, a track somewhere outside town, laps, hundreds, thousands. Not because someone told you to, but because that's the only way the craft gets into your hands. Then you move up, touring cars, regional championships, not glamorous, nobody's watching, but you're learning at a level where mistakes don't finish you, and where real skill starts to separate from enthusiasm. Then Formula 3 or Formula 2, years of that. And only then, if you've genuinely earned it, do you get near an F1 car, IndyCar, if you're American. That progression isn't gatekeeping, it's engineering. An F1 car in the hands of someone who hasn't done the work doesn't just underperform. It exposes everything they don't know, immediately, in public. The EOS M with Magic Lantern is your touring car, not a toy, not a consolation prize. A serious piece of machinery that will teach you everything you need to know to eventually handle something far more powerful without getting destroyed in the process. And here is what that actually costs. Honestly, all in, camera kit, covered in the last video. Call it $800 to $1,200 depending on how cheap you can source things and how fancy you want to go. Computer, at least $2,000, minimum. More on this shortly. Plus backup drives, non-negotiable. Budget another $100 to $200 and mirror everything, every time. So you're looking at about $3,000 to $3,500 just to get started. Not including lighting, which you can work around early on if you know how. More on that later. So as you can see, the camera ends up being the cheapest part of the whole setup. Now, before you think that's a lot, look at this. The fancier the camera, the hungrier the computer. Add redundancy at each tier, even just 2 cameras, and build the system around it. That mid-tier setup lands around 8 to 12,000. And at the top end, you're in the 60, 70, 80,000 range. The EOS M system at $3,500 isn't expensive. It's the lowest entry point where you can actually master RAW properly, and we'll come back to that table when we talk about where this goes next. The people stuck at go-kart level forever aren't there because they're broke. They're there because they spent that same money on forum arguments and one piece of gear at a time, with no system behind any of it. And that brings us to the fork right here. Are you trying to build a business, generate income from product videos, client work, YouTube, make films, narrative, documentary, short form, build an IP catalog, publish your own work, maybe something for a local business, a church, a cause you actually believe in? Or are you gonna post your once-a-year clip in a forum and wait for 3 people to say nice things? Those are genuinely different games. This series is built for the first one. If you're still here, you already know which side of that line you're on. Before we start throwing computer specs around, let's take a step back and get clear on what RAW actually is, because otherwise, none of this is going to make much sense. Let's keep it short. If you're shooting RAW, half of the magic is happening in post. Just like RAW photography, editing is half the art. Noise reduction, color grading, shadow and highlight recovery. This is where it gets interesting. But here's what trips people up the first time they open RAW footage. It looks terrible, flat, washed out, sometimes so noisy it looks like a security camera from 2003. That's not a problem. That's the point. Because nothing had happened to it yet. No grade, no polish, no magic. RAW video is exactly that stage. Pure sensor data, before anyone's touched it. And here's the irony. RAW is the part that looks the most complicated. But once you understand it, it's actually the easiest footage to grade. And the only one that lets you do things other formats simply can't. It's the difference between shaping clay and using a cookie cutter, between following a preset and actual visual authorship. Modern cameras hide this from you. They've already made the decision. The image comes out looking nice, and you're supposed to be grateful. They scan the frame, identify the sky, the face, the shadow, and then quietly destroy the data that makes those things interesting. Automatically, silently, like a waiter who pre-chews your steak before it arrives. Convenient? Sure. The same way instant food is convenient. Add water, stir it up, and a little while later, you're staring at yourself in the mirror, wondering what went wrong. RAW doesn't do that. RAW gives you the ingredients, the kind you can cook with. That's why RAW is so powerful, because instead of the camera making the decisions, you make them. You decide how noise is removed, how highlights roll off, how shadows behave, how colors are shaped. The camera hasn't dumbed it down yet, so there's still something left to work with. And once it's graded properly, RAW footage looks more three-dimensional, more real, more like what your eyes actually saw. It also gives you creative freedom that compressed formats simply can't match. Want a completely deranged color grade? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory yellow skies that somehow still look believable? RAW can do that. Got a shot that looks completely lost? RAW can probably rescue it. Think of RAW like a Formula 1 car. These things don't even start without engineers warming up the engine and the tires. Everything is manual. Everything is tuned. Because that's how you get maximum performance. RAW video works exactly the same way. It's not the convenient option, it's the performance option. Which does mean a learning curve. You're now doing the work the camera normally does quietly in the background. Here's something that makes this concrete. You've probably heard people rave about the Sony A7S III. Incredible in low light, they say, and it is until you record it externally in RAW via an Atomos recorder and strip away everything the camera was doing internally. What you find underneath is often shocking. All that beautiful low-light performance was the camera's internal processing doing heavy lifting, a bulldozer quietly cleaning up the mess before you ever saw it. RAW gives you a scalpel instead of the bulldozer. You decide what gets removed, what gets kept, how the noise is handled, what the image ultimately looks like. That is the whole point. That is why you're here. but dragging a scalpel across every single frame with precision in multiple passes takes serious processing power. Because making a raw image beautiful is not one step. You fix it first. Exposure, white balance, the technical mess the camera handed you. Then you shape it, contrast, color separation, killing that flat digital look. Then you build it. Texture, depth, the subtle layered decisions that give an image a personality. Every single one of those steps costs compute. And this is where the internet starts lying to you. Someone posts their workflow, 2 nodes, maybe 3, white balance, a little exposure correction, done, and they call it their
mega workflow.
And you look at the result and think, honestly, my grandma could have shot this on her 20-year-old phone and it would look about the same. Then you watch a real colorist, someone who's graded something that made your jaw drop. 15 nodes, 30, sometimes more. Who is right? Both of them, different goals. The person with 3 nodes is not trying to author an image. They're trying to make it acceptable. That's not why you're here. Magic is incremental. It's not one big move. It's a sequence of small ones, each doing a specific job. The subtle decisions that make an image feel like it was made by someone who knew what they wanted. Every single one of those steps drags performance. That's not a bug. That's what serious image work actually costs. A computer that handles all of this in real time, where every change executes instantly, where you build a full grade and just hit play, that computer exists. But it costs north of $6,000 just for the computer, not the display. What I'm showing you today is how to get into this game on 2000. And we'll also look at what you can do if you've got something already sitting around it, because you might be closer than you think, but regardless, you're gonna need some computer power. Ideally, you want the biggest machine you can get your hands on, but here's the lucky break. You saved yourself thousands by not buying a red or black magic. That money, invest some of it in your editing machine. And here's lucky break number 2. Remember, the EOS M maxes out at about 3K, and most of the time we're working in an HD timeline anyway. Compared to 4K RAW, that's roughly a quarter of the processing load, and compared to 6K, it's about a sixth. So while you can never have too much computer power when working with RAW, this setup at least gives you a fighting chance on a modest machine. And let's be clear about what $2,000 actually buys you. This is not the dream machine. This is the apprenticeship machine. It will not play back a fully built grade in real time, but it will get you making real work, building real skills, and producing images that the vast majority of people online simply cannot match. Because they either spent their budget on gear instead of understanding, or they gave up before they learned how to work with the machine rather than against it. And if you already have something sitting around, don't panic. We'll get to that. In the Mac world, which is where I live and where I'll start, any M-series chip is already a serious tool, even refurbished. Here's how to think about which one. The older the chip, the higher the spec you need. If you're finding an M1, go as high as you can, ideally maxed out. M2, M3, you can ease off a little. By M4 or M5, even a base configuration with a GPU bump can hold up for this workflow. Think of it as a sliding scale. Older chip, higher spec. Newer chip, more flexibility. Storage, 2 terabytes internal minimum if you can afford it. If not, a fast Thunderbolt SSD and move on. And here's what most people don't think about. The MacBook display is genuinely good, not reference monitor good. But for what we're doing, pair it with learning to read scopes, and you've got a 95% all-in-one solution. If you're on Windows, your main advantage is upgradability. Gamers are your best friends. They're constantly chasing the newest GPU and dumping the old ones. Budget $400 and you get a beast that handles raw video without breaking a sweat. And the beautiful thing, when funds become available, you don't replace anything. You just stack. Another GPU, more RAM, faster storage. The Mac guys buy a new computer. You buy a part. The downside, when it comes to color, most standard displays are simply not up for the job, so now you're dealing with calibration, dedicated color monitors, possibly a Blackmagic output box on top of all of that. It's a research project before you've even opened DaVinci, and Windows just has more moving parts in general. Driver conflicts, compatibility issues, the kind of thing that can eat your entire weekend without warning. So if you know what you're doing, Windows can get you more performance per dollar. But if you want to save mental energy and avoid falling in yet another rabbit hole and just get making great visuals fast,
the Mac route is still the easiest. It just works.
Before we go any further, and if you haven't done so already, make sure to grab your free EOS M Blueprint Starter Kit. It's the companion guide for this entire series. Whether you're brand new or you've been following along for a while, you'll automatically get the latest updates whenever a new episode drops. The link is in the description.
Now, here are the hacks that close the gap between the $2,000 and the $6,000 machine. Not all the way, not forever, but enough to get you making real work right now. Hack number 1, work in sections. 30 seconds, maybe a minute at a time. Build your grade, stop, let the machine pre-render the cache, go make a coffee, come back, refine. Is it the kind of workflow you'd describe to someone at a dinner party? Absolutely not. But it works, and finished is better than perfect. And just to be clear about what this machine can and can't do, because people get this wrong, you can do full projects on a $2,000 machine. Short films, product pieces, talking heads, social content, even feature-length work if you're willing to work around it. The honest ceiling is different. It's when a client needs a 40-minute event film by Thursday morning and you're staring at an export that has genuinely stopped moving, consistently grinding long-form work on hard deadlines. That's when the apprenticeship machine starts being the bottleneck instead of a creative tool. That's when the $6,000 machine pays for itself. Hack number 2, dial down noise reduction precision. Your grading software's noise reduction has a precision setting. Find it, set it to the lowest setting you can tolerate. The processing load drops significantly. And even at lowest precision, it is still outperforming that bulldozer noise reduction baked into most hybrid cameras. Hack number 3, yard sale monitors. Not nice screens, the kind that cost $10, $15 and smell faintly of a decade in someone's basement. 2 of them plugged in purely to extend the workspace. Timelines on one, scopes on another, sound libraries wherever they need to live. The color grading purists will absolutely roast me for using a laptop display as a primary color reference, while 2 bargain bin relics flank it like confused bodyguards. Look at the channel, look at the results, then decide how much the purists actually know about getting things done under real conditions. Hack number 4, the Frankenstein. In 2019, I bought the last Intel MacBook Pro, top spec. Brand new, $7,000, on paper an absolute monster. But instead of complaining, I made it work. Ice packs under the machine, rotated from the fridge during renders. That eventually escalated into a proper cooling module from AliExpress, the kind built for miniature refrigerators. The sort of setup that would get you immediately uninvited from the local cinematographer's meetup. Run it by itself, it literally forms ice crystals. MacBook went from 100 degrees Celsius down to around 40. Fan noise disappeared. The machine could finally use its own hardware again. Then I added an external GPU, cables everywhere, thermal pads, 2 graphics cards running simultaneously. An absolute Frankenstein, but it shipped projects for years. Was it dignified? No. Did it work? Yes. I've since moved to an M4 and none of that nonsense is necessary anymore, but I told you the story because if that's all you have right now, an older iMac that used to be powerful, a Windows machine from 2020 that was a beast in its day, there is a way. You just have to be willing to think. The floor is $2,000 of machine. Below it, the friction becomes so high that you never actually finish anything. And unfinished projects aren't filmmaking. They're an expensive hobby.
I've seen creators in parts of the world where even a 10-year-old computer is a luxury.
If your system genuinely isn't there yet, don't force the raw workflow. Uninstall Magic Lantern for now and use the legacy picture profile called Technicolor CineStyle I've made available below. Download it, install it on your EOS M. It's a picture profile. Not raw, but it gives you a flat cinematic starting point that instantly looks a lot closer to what you're aiming for, without any of the conversion overhead, without the heavy post pipeline. And the files stay small and manageable. You can still build your visual language, still develop taste, still get work out the door. When the proper machine is there, come back. Magic Lantern will be waiting. But in order to really unlock what your EOS M can actually do, that's where the proper pipeline begins. If you really want to get the most out of your raw footage, I strongly recommend you look into the studio version of DaVinci Resolve. Remember the Formula One analogy? DaVinci Studio is basically the team of engineers behind the car. You can run without them, but you're not winning the race. And there's a reason for that. Originally, DaVinci wasn't even an editing program. For years, it was just a high-end color grading system used in Hollywood finishing suites. Then Grant Petty, the crazy Australian who had shook up the cinema camera market, bought the company and turned it into a full filmmaking platform. So today it does everything you expect from an editor. But its DNA is still high-end color grading. And that matters when you're working with RAW. So not using DaVinci is kind of like having a bag full of raw diamonds and grinding them into powder. Sure, you'll still get something, but you've completely ignored what made it valuable in the first place. And this is not hating on other apps. Final Cut, Premiere, Canva, whatever AI tool dropped this week, that's the high school team. They're good for a lot of work. But when you're watching something on Netflix or any piece of content that makes you go, wow, this looks insane, there's a 99.9% chance you're in DaVinci Resolve territory. And by the way, even as a small niche channel, I'm already getting almost daily requests to promote random software or products. That's not what this channel is about. So if you ever see me recommend something, it's for one reason only: I use it myself every day. Pro tip, and this one comes from experience. You might wonder why I held onto that Intel Mac for so long, or why I was still running an older version of DaVinci. Once you have a setup that works, you stop touching it. The computer, the software, the OS, all of it. Install something new, and suddenly something breaks. DaVinci behaves differently, your project is in pieces. I'm deliberately a couple of versions behind on DaVinci. Same with the OS. A running system is worth more than a feature you don't need yet. So after everything I told you, here's the strange contradiction. Magic Lantern has almost no real documentation, yet DaVinci Resolve has so much you could spend years clicking through it and still not know what actually matters. And right in the middle of that sits CDNG, the dark alley of codecs. Abandoned by most of the industry, you're basically navigating a city with no street signs on one side and a phone book the size of a brick on the other.
The number you have dialed cannot be reached.
That's where people get stuck, which is exactly what the DaVinci section of my missing manual training is built to solve. A system you can learn in an afternoon. 3.5 hours separating a real repeatable workflow from the raw folklore. So you can start producing top-notch content straight away. On a camera so cheap, it's like turning up to a Formula One race in a go-kart and somehow winning. Linked under this video. And here's the one thing nobody on the internet will ever tell you. Because it's boring and it doesn't sell cameras. Start with something that works and cycle. Shoot, edit, grade. Again and again. Each cycle teaches you something the previous one couldn't. You start to see where things break, where you want more control. But more importantly, you start to notice everything else. The light, the composition, how moving the camera just slightly changes everything. Only when you've done enough cycles do you develop the genuine ability to see what part of the chain is actually holding you back. And at that point, 9 times out of 10, it won't be the equipment. The system is what makes this work, not any single part of it. Camera, light, audio, workflow, computer, software, reps. Remove any one of them and the whole thing collapses. What you're building here is entry into the C League. Controlled output on your own terms. And let me be clear about something. The C League is not a waiting room. It paid my bills for years. Content networks, private events, music videos, online courses for clients, personal brand content. If you have a handcrafted product, a service, a brand that deserves to look like something, this is already the level where that happens. This is already real. Or if you want to move up from here, tier B, then A, you'll arrive at each level knowing why and knowing you can handle it. Buy the level 1 camera now before you've done any of this. A B-level player on a bad day eats you alive. Or maybe you're like me, someone who does more than one thing and has no intention of stopping. I'm doing business consulting, I'm doing music again, and I don't have to feel guilty about $100,000 of gear sitting on a shelf collecting dust, because this setup costs almost nothing to keep ready. Whenever inspiration strikes, whenever something needs to look genuinely polished, it's there, lean, capable, always ready, no commitment tax. And if the C-League still feels like too much, genuinely fine. Get something like an Osmo, let the camera handle everything, focus on speed and volume. That's a real path, just a different one. But if you're still here, you already know which path you're on. You're either building a system or you're collecting toys. And as we wrap up this video on minimum post-production requirements, just a quick side note, especially since we've been using all these racing metaphors. For those who don't know, Michael Schumacher is widely considered one of the greatest drivers of all time. And there's a story about him I always come back to. He grew up around a small kart track, not much money. And when other drivers threw away their worn-out tires, he'd pull them out of the trash, put them back on his kart, and keep driving. More laps, more reps, and he'd still beat everyone. The equipment was worse. He wasn't. And that's exactly why I like the EOS M so much. Because if you know what you're doing, you can beat setups that cost 10 times or more. It's not about the tool, it's about the driver.
In the next video, I'll show you how to convert your MLV footage the right way. If you're doing it wrong, you're basically throwing away the magic of RAW. Don't miss it.